Hey friends! In our last video, we covered 5 major things BeamNG could use to get closer to being the ultimate racing simulator. In this video, we'll be covering the final 5 to round out this 2-part video series. If you haven't seen the original, I'll link it above right now, and of course also in the description down below. Make sure to watch that first. BeamNG is a remarkably unique car physics sandbox in that it component models the entire vehicle rather than the industry standard of using a proximal input-output code in order to result in something which coarsely represents the way a car would handle under a given set of circumstances. While this comes with a tremendous innate potential, it also makes finessing various aspects of the code toward desired outcomes exponentially more difficult. It could be said that this is the reason that only now, after almost a decade in development, are the cars in BeamNG actually beginning to handle like one would expect them to. This is immensely exciting, especially if you're a sim racer, because you know that the future is just around the corner. Once the simulator successfully pulls this off, it'll be difficult to ever go back to the empirical models currently in use. Since BeamNG is finally at a point where it's attracting the attention of sim racers far and wide and showing its merit as a driver training tool, we're going to explore 5 things which would help truly take it to the next level so that it can stand shoulder to shoulder with the present day titans of sim racing. Let's go. Yes, now we're getting into the esoteric sim racing stuff. While it's true that, due to the work of some wonderful community members, we already have ported versions of tracks such as the Nürburgring, Spa and Brands Hatch, the reality is that none of these are officially licensed, and as such can't be used as part of the official marketing draw of BeamNG. The phenomenal thing about these track ports, however, is that they allowed us to experience, for perhaps the first time ever, how BeamNG truly feels on realistically nuanced surface meshes. For the first time, we could really test how advanced the physics model actually is in direct contrast to other leading sims such as ACC and iRacing. The net results? Surprisingly bloody good. BeamNG, perhaps even unknowingly to developers themselves, was turning into a very good bona fide racing simulator in its own right as they continued to develop various aspects of the physics engine. The amazing thing? It did so completely emergently as a result of them simply building a kick-ass simulator from the bottom up. Now that's true simulation. It leaves us in a position where we would gain so much from BeamNG by including laser or photogrammetrically scanned maps. It's one of the few simulators where such an insane level of mesh detail would actually make a substantial difference in the driving experience. Of course, in order to do this with officially licensed racetracks would take both a commitment toward racing as well as a substantial financial outlay, so the developers can certainly be forgiven if this isn't near the top of their priority list for their sandbox simulator. While BeamNG is arguably the closest thing we currently have to a true rally simulator, sans perhaps a highly modded version of Richard Burns Rally, it is held back somewhat by its gravel modelling. There appears to be no modelling to account for the dirt that would build up on the tyre's sidewalls as the car drifts sideways, which would naturally create a sort of slowing effect. Similarly, when the brakes are stomped hard, the tyres lock and they should dig into the loose surface, thus helping slow the car down sans the use of ABS. One of the few cool simulation features added to Dirt Rally 2.0 was gradually wearing surfaces. Essentially, the further down the order you ran in a given stage, the more worn in the tracks became. While the first runners would be tasked with dust sweeping duties, being forced to blast all the slippery loose surface material off the road, those running a few positions behind would find themselves in the sweet spot. Meanwhile, those at the end of the running order would be cursed driving on massive indentations in the road's surface, completely messing with road cambering and the car's ability to maintain a steady line over the stage. Deformable and dynamic road surfaces is something BeamNG desperately needs to take its off-road simulation to the next level. Leading on from our last point, one conspicuously absent feature from BeamNG, preventing it from truly boxing among the forerunners in modern sim racing, is dynamic track states. Sims such as iRacing feature a dynamically altering rubber racing line, which accumulates based on the amount of laps cars do over the course of a session. What this does is create a better sense of grip on the road's surface the more cars drive over it. Meanwhile, if cars go off-road, they can kick up marbles and dirt, throwing them on the road surface, hence making certain spots more slippery. This is true of tarmac off the racing line in general. If you're not on the rubbered-in stuff on racing slicks, you tend to have far less grip, thus adding to the strategy of driving. Do you risk overtaking off the racing line with potentially less grip to pull off your maneuver, or do you stay behind and follow the train, biding your time until you can use the toe to slingshot past on the next straight? These are all strategic elements that will be missing from BeamNG in multiplayer racing, at least until dynamic track states are implemented. Here's the kicker. You know all that nice, laid down rubber we were referring to just before, which helps increase our grip on the road? Well, it has the complete opposite effect in the rain. As the water breaks down the oils in the rubber, it becomes a slick, nasty surface that you want to avoid at all costs. Now, in order for that to actually be a thing, BeamNG would have to model rain first. This would be quite a step because modeling hydrodynamics is quite the science unto itself. They've made a great start by adding buoyancy to bodies of water and allowing them to carry cars away with the current. Now it's just a matter of working out how to get that water interacting as a thin film on the road surface and making water displacement and all of that other fun stuff work to make wet weather driving possible. Outside of the ETK driver training center at least. On the upside for the more casual gamers, this would also allow them to recreate all new kinds of slippery, adverse weather crashes. While this isn't strictly necessary to turn BeamNG into a racing simulator, it's too good of an opportunity in waiting to ignore. One of the most fun aspects of modern arcade and simcade racing titles is racing to unlock currency, sponsorships, and ultimately parts for your car. Meanwhile, BeamNG is a perfect platform to create a progression system like Street Rod. Yes, I know I'm going back over 3 decades there, but just bear with me. Street Rod had an amazing progression mechanic where you would earn money by drag racing your rivals, only to then scan the classifieds and find new procedurally listed parts to purchase and stick into your hot rod. It had everything from engine tuning through to wheel upgrades. Pretty impressive for 1989, and certainly the cause of many wasted hours on the school computers in my younger years. That is, when I wasn't using Dope Wars to help build my entrepreneurial sensibilities. This system was eventually fleshed out and perfected in mainstream titles such as the Gran Turismo series. A CARPG system like this is an absolutely perfect fit for a modular title like BeamNG. It's basically begging for a progression mechanic to be inserted over the top of the baseline game and would lead to an absolute ton of engagement for those who just aren't into the idea of absolutely setting up every single scenario via the open-ended sandbox method. This one is for the no VR, no buy guys. I'm not one of you, but I respect how you stick to your guns. VR support is one of the biggest modern omissions from BeamNG. While I personally understand why that might be, given that the game is still a little bit beta-ish with its performance and iffy with its graphical presentation, the last thing you'd want to do is strap 2 4K screens to a person's face and give them a really close look at things. After all, the graphics still suffer from some fairly gnarly pop-in even on regular screens. That aside, VR is definitely something to work toward down the track, as it forms a big part of many sim racers' enjoyment and immersion into the racing experience. Ultimately, it's the best way to train for real-life stints, so for BeamNG to potentially one day be used as the basis for any sort of race-grade simulation, VR would be a notable stepping stone. Triple screen support, while technically there, is a little bit iffy. There are some obtuse requirements and it isn't necessarily easy to set up for every system. I know this well due to the incessant complaining from my friends who have insane triple OLED TV rigs. Well, while this is less a feature request and more of a let's get some bug fixes in there request, it does give us a nice place to lead out on. Bonus round. I've waited right to the very end to get completely selfish. You all know I got into motorsport through Rally. I love Rally. BeamNG is basically the best rally sim on the market right now, whether it intends to be or not. I want full-length rally stages. You want full-length rally stages. We want a co-driver.
Sharp right, listen. Sammy.
Real damage, 50km stages, let's do it. Full thoroughbred mode. Simply finishing is its own achievement. Let's finally, after so many decades, get a true rally driving experience on the PC. And that's my list of 10 things that would help BeamNG become the racing simulator of the future. Currently, it seems to represent the best overall hope for soft-body, ground-up vehicle dynamic simulation. The sensation of weight transfer, chassis flex, and overall interactivity and joy when driving in BeamNG is already insane. It's one of my favorite driving simulators and always the first one I grab for when friends come over and want to have a quick turn in the sim rig. You can see the joy immediately light up their faces, whether they're a thoroughbred car nerd and just love manually slamming gears while fighting with one of the 2-ton 70s muscle car monsters that have way more power than grip, or whether they're a layman that's just astonished at how amazingly the crashes unfold. BeamNG already has a fantastic present, but with the right work under the hood, its potential future has no limits. What would you like to see added to BeamNG? Let us know in the comments down below and subscribe to catch our future BeamNG content. Until the next one, I'll see you all later.